Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is absolutely fascinating, but also, frankly, deeply urgent. We're looking at utility-scale battery energy storage systems, or BESS for short. Look, these massive, megawatt-scale sites are literally the backbone of our modern energy grid. But as we're going to see today, while we've been, busy guarding the front door, we might have accidentally left all the digital windows wide open. We're going to break down the exact vulnerabilities facing these critical systems right now, drawing directly from some seriously eye-opening recent analysis. So, if you're here to understand that wild intersection between physical infrastructure and digital security, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, so think of a modern utility-scale battery site like a giant physical fortress. Right now, the whole industry is incredibly hyper-focused on guarding the walls of that fortress, right? Discussions are totally dominated by physical safety measures and fire suppression. And hey, understandably so. But here's the Trojan horse of our whole story. While everybody is obsessing over physical safety, the digital perimeter of these sites is just sitting there as this alarmingly exposed flank. It's wild. We're heavily guarding against physical fires, but leaving ourselves completely wide open to invisible, remote cyber sabotage.
So that brings us to Section 1, the hidden grid threat.
To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to talk about SCADA. That stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Think of this as the actual central nervous system of a megawatt-scale battery site. It's the entire architecture that monitors and controls the physical equipment on the ground. And honestly, because it basically holds the keys to the kingdom, the source material points out something pretty scary. SCADA has become a massive prime target for operational disruption or outright sabotage. I mean, if bad actors want to take down the grid today, they aren't bringing bolt cutters and physical tools. They are targeting this exact digital architecture. Moving on to Section 2, BSS's exposed digital perimeter. Now, this next part perfectly highlights a huge blind spot a lot of asset operators have right now. See, operators tend to focus super heavily on hardware redundancy. They're building out all these physical backups to make absolutely sure the system doesn't fail. But here's the kicker. All that physical hardware means absolutely nothing if you have a single, unpatched communication gateway sitting in your system's inverter. Seriously, operators are walking around with this total false sense of security, thinking their physical backups will save the day, while completely overlooking the fact that just one unpatched digital gateway is literally all a hacker needs to bypass every single physical defense they've built. I really want this point to sink in for a second. A single, unpatched vulnerability can compromise grid stability just as fast as a thermal event. Think about that. A thermal event, like a massive, catastrophic battery fire, is the industry's absolute worst nightmare, right? But the data shows us that a digital threat can happen just as fast and be just as physically destructive to our grid stability. A few lines of malicious code can essentially cause the exact same catastrophic grid failure as a raging physical fire. It's mind-blowing. All right, Section 3. 3 vectors of compromise. So where are these attacks actually coming from? This source material explicitly names 3 specific threats facing SCADA systems and inverter firmware in these utility-scale setups. Number 1 is remote cloud platforms. Number 2, third-party vendor access. And number 3, legacy communication protocols. Listen, these are not just theoretical, maybe someday risks. These are the actual documented pathways being used right now that expose our critical infrastructure to remote compromise.
Let's take a step back and unpack why these vectors even exist in the first place. Modern containerized parks rely more and more on these digital touchpoints just to function efficiently. They use cloud-based platforms for optimization, they use remote monitoring interfaces to keep tabs on those massive batteries from miles away, and they absolutely rely on third-party tools for things like essential firmware updates. But here is the massive trade-off. This growing reliance on connectivity, while great for optimization, is exactly what expands the attack surface. Every single time a third-party vendor remotes in to update firmware, or every time the system talks to a cloud optimization platform, it creates a brand new, potential open door for operational disruption. Which leads us directly into Section 4, securing critical energy infrastructure. Fortunately, the analysis gives us a really clear, super urgent roadmap for operators to fix this. Step 1, you absolutely have to move beyond basic IT firewalls. Those basic firewalls, they just aren't going to cut it anymore for megawatt-scale sites. Step 2, operators need to implement 3 essential cybersecurity frameworks that are specifically designed to protect critical infrastructure. And then Step 3, the ultimate goal here, is to rigorously protect against remote compromise.
You literally have to seal off those vectors we talked about, the cloud platforms, the vendor access, the legacy protocols, but using those robust frameworks. I want to highlight this incredibly stark, powerful quote straight from the text because it just perfectly bridges the gap between IT security and physical engineering. It says, securing critical energy infrastructure requires treating every digital touchpoint as a potential vector for physical grid failure. Wow, that is a massive paradigm shift, isn't it? It means a remote monitoring interface is no longer just an IT concern. It is a full-blown physical engineering concern. Every single digital touchpoint is basically a potential fuse that could take down the physical grid. And that brings us to our final thought today, which is actually a direct challenge posed by the analysis itself. If you're a grid operator, an asset manager, or a cybersecurity lead watching this explainer, how are your teams auditing legacy SCADA interfaces and remote vendor access points against these evolving threats? Are you guys just looking at the physical fire suppression, or are you actively auditing the digital windows too? It's a critical question, and honestly, it demands immediate action. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll see you next time.